Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I was walking past my bookshelves and I spotted Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry, which is a book that I read last year and really enjoyed. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And I just have this feeling that I want to reread that book. But as I was looking through my shelves and I also have to read 7 Days in June for Chanel's book club for the end of this month. And I was just like, you know what? I have a lot of books that have Black representation across different age groups, and it is Black History Month. I decided to do a weekend reading vlog where I try to get through some of this TBR that I have and maybe find some new favorites with Black representation in them to celebrate our Black History Month. It's Thursday evening right now, and I still have 2 more assignments that I need to do for school, so I won't be able to read right now, but I did pull together a tentative TBR for this vlog. So like I said, I already have to read 7 Days in June for the Krusty book club, which is over on Chanel's channel for the end of this month. So I will put her channel information and the live show date that we're supposed to have in the description box for this video so you guys can join us in our discussions of this book. But since I'm doing a weekend reading vlog, I'm gonna try to fit that one in. I do have 2 middle grade books that I thought I could fit in just because they're middle grade, so they're gonna be very short, and that is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. I am very excited for this one because I've heard that it is African American folklore, and so I'm very interested in that because we don't have a lot of myths and folklores in terms of African American culture, but everyone seems to really love this book, so I'm very excited about it. And another middle grade favorite that everybody has been raving about is Amari and the Night Brothers, and I actually got this from my half price books, so definitely want to try to fit that into this weekend reading vlog. So since we have 2 middle grade books and an adult, I decided to try to fit 2 YAs into this book. One of them is going to be Charming as a Verb. This has a Black male main character, and I believe he's Haitian American, and he either is, I think he's a first generation American of Haitian immigrants, so I'm very interested in this one. I also have a pre-order that I just picked up, and that is Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman, which just came out, and so I'm gonna try to fit that into this vlog as well. So tentatively, this is our TBR. We're gonna try to read 7 Days in June, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, Amari and the Night Brothers, Charming as a Verb, and Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman. That's 5 books that I'm gonna try to read in a weekend, but 2 are middle grade, so I know that I can read both of them in one day, and 2 are YA, so I'm fairly confident I can read those in one day too. And then 7 Days in June is actually only maybe 300 pages, a little over 300 pages, so this feels like a doable TBR. But first, I have to finish my assignments for the week. I don't think that I've ever discussed on my channel what I am in school for. So I am a graduate student at Arizona State University for a master's in international relations. I would like to do diplomatic work or some type of international work, even if it's not related to the government sector. I don't have a problem working for an NGO, but essentially that is my ultimate goal. I go to school for international relations, and I would like to be a U.S. diplomat or foreign service officer. And so for this term, I am taking a religion and diplomacy class, which has a lot of reading. My reading has taken such a hit. My personal reading has taken such a hit from me having to read so much for my religion and diplomacy class, but so far I really love it. I have learned so much in terms of how much of a part religion plays in U.S. diplomacy, or how much of a role it doesn't, to the detriment play in a role in U.S. diplomacy. And then also I am taking a class on character-driven leadership, which is also very interesting. I'm actually writing a paper about a specific leader in history. And so for this paper, I decided to write about Kwame Nkrumah, which was the first president of Ghana. So I'm already kicking off, Black History Month with like a bang. Check me out. So I'm gonna try to put a dent in the last 2 assignments that I need to do, and then I'm gonna start Charming as a Verb. And I did manage to get that one on audio as well, so I think this is gonna be like a hybrid read where I'm going to read a bit, and then when I start cleaning and cooking dinner for this evening, I'll probably switch to the audio.
They do not tell us that we should unite, that we are all as good as we are able to make ourselves once we are free.
Okay, so it is just after midnight. I managed to finish all of the schoolwork that I had to do today. My second assignment was mostly just a journal on how I would interact with religious leaders in international countries. And so that was very interesting. I am religious, but I wouldn't say that like I am overly religious. So like if I had to describe myself, I would say that I am a secularist, and I know that I feel that way because America is kind of like a secular country where we definitely separate our church from our state government, or at least we pretend to. And so having to come to terms with the fact that outside of US borders, religion runs the world, and a lot of government decisions are made based off of like the majority religion that is in that country. So I have had a very enlightening week just analyzing myself and identifying myself, and a lot of the way that I see certain conflicts and situations throughout the world is heavily influenced by the fact that I am American, and we have this idea of religion being an individual thing. Like, we are religious people in America, like most of the country identifies with a religion, but like it's something that we do ourselves in like our private time. Religion is not something that we take to school or work or to our government. It's not something that we always take into like our voting polls, but it is for other parts of the world. So that was a very interesting assignment, and again, I am learning quite a bit. Once I finished that assignment, I started reading Charming as a Verb, and it is so much shorter than I expected it to be. Like, I flew through 125 pages, and then I got really hungry, so I decided to switch to the audiobook and listen. So I have literally done 125 pages of me reading and then 125 pages through the audiobook. So I am so close to being done because I'm on page 254 and the book is only 320 pages. But so far, I have really enjoyed this book. Our main character is quite interesting, and I don't think that he is going to be a character for everyone to like. If you have to like your main character or connect with your main character in the story, and you don't like immoral characters, I don't know if you're going to like Henry. The book starts off with our main character Henry, who is a Haitian American, and his mother and father came to the country, and like really their whole family have like this diaspora going on because every member of the family left Haiti to try to make a better living for themselves and for their children. Some people went, like, I think he has a family member that went to Miami, another family member that went to like Canada or Switzerland. So basically this whole family kind of dispersed. And so Henry's parents decided to come to New York, and he goes to this very high-end prep academy, and he is very intelligent, but most of his intelligent thoughts only occur in his mind. He has a gift with words. He's very sly and cunning, and he has a gift of gab where he can just say something and he just knows how to say exactly what you want to hear and how to keep himself mysterious. And so he has this thing where he's like not always authentic, or very rarely authentic with the people that he is around. But it's even more so prominent, I believe, as a like child of an immigrant. And so like I grew up in Florida, so I grew up around a lot of Haitian immigrants, or just immigrants period. So I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of being a first generation child where you are mostly American but your parents are not. And so there's a heavy amount of code switching, or like the way you present yourself in public is not always the way that you present yourself at home, because there's a certain amount of expectations for how your parents want you to act. But then you have to kind of cherry pick at that when you go to an American school, because you don't want to be outcasted, you want to fit in. And so Henry has kind of mastered the alternating between him being at home and telling like perfect little white lies to remain the son that his mom and dad want him to be, but also gaining a certain level of like prestige and popularity at school. And along the way, he has just become less authentic. And his father is adamant about him going to Columbia. And so he's determined to get into Columbia University just because really his father wants him to. But when he's doing his interview with the admissions counselor for Columbia, he like thinks that he knows the interview, because he says everything that he thinks the admission counselor wants to hear from him, and it has never failed him. Like, he did all of the research, he signed up for the perfect clubs, did the perfect amount of extracurricular activities, have a decent GPA. Like, he has tailored his entire application and really himself to what he thinks Columbia wants to hear. But the admissions counselor basically is like, you sound perfect, but like, you're not being authentic. Like, I don't think that you're showing your true self. And he's pretty much like stumped, because he's like, why does my true self matter? Like, I told you everything that like you needed to hear. You should be clapping, and like I should be automatically admitted into Columbia. And so of course he was waitlisted, because her telling him to like be his true self was just like this weird dilemma for him, because he's like, why does that matter? Like, I don't know. I like really being in his head, because I relate to him a lot. Now, of course, I am older, so I have learned to be more authentic, and like how it can aid me in certain situations. And then also, I'm not a child of an immigrant, so my level of code switching or alternating between school or like the outside world and my home is not as drastic as it is for him. But nonetheless, I still find him very relatable. I still completely understand him. And so there is a classmate that he has, and she is known as like the more intense type student, because her mother is actually a dean to Columbia University, and she wants to get into Princeton, and she's just like all about school. She speaks very matter of fact. She's very straightforward, and she's kind of like intimidating to the other classmates, and she is nervous about her college admission as well. So she comes to Henry and asks him if he can kind of like show her how to loosen up and to like be more cool. So there is a romance that sparks between them, but the romance is not as central to the plot as Henry's journey to learn to be more authentic. And he does make a very questionable decision in this book that I think would really upset the readers. I would not be shocked if someone said that like they immediately started hating the book when Henry made this really like bad decision. But from the amount of pressure that he's under, and how difficult it is for him to come to terms with like how to be his authentic self and like not be judged, because there's a certain amount of vulnerability that comes with being your true self. And when you go to this prep academy with all these rich students who have car service, like, you are more self-conscious of putting your true self out there. And also, he's very desperate to not disappoint his father. So I don't agree with the decision that he made, of course, but it makes sense to me. I am really enjoying this. I feel like it's a book that so many youth can relate to, like even not being an immigrant. And I didn't go to a prep academy school, but I was an IB student. And if you guys have been in an IB program, that is competitive. And he's also talked about how he knows people see him as the result of affirmative action and like performative activism, where they need more kids of color and like more immigrant kids. And so for him to be a Black kid, also Haitian American, and the first son of immigrants, like he was a shoo-in. But like Honestly, he's very intelligent and he deserves to be there. But no one's really going to think about that when you go to a prep white academy. Like, they're just going to see the fact that you're there as affirmative action. And so he's like, I'm not really gonna go out of my way to force you guys to change your mind. If that's what you think, like, it's whatever. I think that I'm also going to start another book before I go to sleep, and it might be a middle grade. Maybe we're gonna try Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky next. So it is Friday. What time is it? It is now Friday at 2:30 in the afternoon. I woke up kind of late and I decided to run some errands, so I ended up switching to an audiobook while I was out. So in our group chat, Chanel asked us to start learning to crochet with her. So several people in the group chat have been doing mini crochet projects, but I decided that I wanted to make a blanket. Actually, like, the only reason I said that I would start crocheting with her or learn to crochet with Chanel is because I wanted to make a blanket. But I decided to buy like the beginner type yarn just to get used to the hand movements, and it's been going kind of successfully. But honestly, a scarf and a little hat, it's not gonna do it for me. It's not enough for me. So I went out to Michael's and I grabbed some yarn. I'm gonna try to do like a two-tone color. So I bought this, it's like burnt orange, but you guys can't really see in the camera. And then I also have like a little gray. And I seen this video where she had two different colors and I watched all the way through and it seemed totally doable. And yeah, go big or go home. I know for a fact that I'm not going to be able to finish this blanket in this vlog because the video literally said if I worked on it for an hour a day, I would be finished in like a week. So yeah, this is going to be a very long project. I also grabbed this kind of like basket to hold my yarn supplies in because the balls of yarn is actually pretty large, so I bought this little thing so it could hold it inside of it. I'm also getting low on candles, so I grabbed some of those while I was out because I am a huge lover of candles. Like, I buy almost as many candles as I buy books. Candles are my serenity and it makes me happy. So I went to Marshall's. I grabbed this teak wood one, which has like this very manly musk smell, and that is like my favorite. I don't like fruity smells. So when all the girls were living their best life with their Japanese cherry blossom, I was not that girl. I don't like things that smell sweet or fruity. So anything with like watermelon or peaches, not my thing. I typically go towards aromas that smell like clean linen. I love the smell of fresh laundry. I love the smell of like ocean breeze, anything rustic or woodsy, masculine. Those are the type of fragrances that I like to smell. So I also got this one called Spicy Woods. I am now on page 172 in Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. And this is a book that has so many themes in it, and it's a book that I would want to read to my nephew because of all of the things that are discussed in this book. And I feel like if I was to read it to him almost like a bedtime story, it would be such an animated experience, and I think that it would be so fun to share that with my nieces and nephews. So I mentioned earlier that I was writing a paper on Kwame Nkrumah, and he is definitely a more problematic person throughout history. History has not treated him kindly, and because of the way that his decline happened, he is viewed as a tyrant and a despot. But when he was younger, he had so many like dreams and aspirations for the Pan-African unity of Africa, and just learning about things that inspired him and like gave him this ambition to break free of British colonial rule in Ghana and to create this country. He had so many aspirations and like things that he wanted to happen. And one of the things that like really stuck with me as I was writing this paper was the idea that Black people, no matter where you go in terms of like Black countries in the world, we don't have the ability to save our own people. Most of the majority Black countries and like Black governments are doing everything they can to kind of just stay afloat. And when you look at other rescue missions throughout the world, there's normally another country of a predominant race that has a significant military that can go in and kind of alleviate the stress or the disenfranchisement of their citizens in the diaspora for different countries. Because again, I study international relations and like global politics. Black people don't have the ability to do that. And so when we come together to provide for our own people and to save our own people, that is significant to the Black culture all around the world. Because if something is happening to the African diaspora around the world, the only thing that we can do is kind of like protest in our own streets and do everything we can to send foreign aid and like stuff like that. But we don't have the ability to really go in there military wise and save our people. And Kwame Nkrumah wanted that. He sent Ghana into debt by sending military aid to other countries that were trying to break free of colonial rule as well. And the citizens got really upset about that because they're like, we're a new country and we are trying to get on our feet and we are now in debt because you want to send military aid to these countries that should be fighting for their own freedom. Like, there is no sense of unity. And Kwame Nkrumah didn't agree with that. He wanted there to be a central connection throughout the entire continent of Africa where they could join together on like their military aid and be able to rely on each other militarily against colonial forces in like the Western world in total. And that is such a noble thing, and I don't think that is something that is focused on and really talked about because it's not something that we really bring up, because most Black people in whatever country they are in are trying to stay afloat, and so they're not really thinking about their neighbors, their cousins, distant family members that may have gotten off on a different stop on the slave trade. And this book discusses that in such tiny bites, and I thought that it was so beautiful that this author decided to cover something like that. And the way that it is done just brought me like feel good vibes, because that is so important for us to recognize that we are underfoot in almost any country in the world, because every Black person, no matter where you are in the world, have experienced racism and oppression and disenfranchisement, and we march and we protest, and that has gotten far for African Americans, but so many other countries throughout the world, so many Black people in different countries throughout the world are still fighting and protesting in any way that they can, and we can't really lend them aid other than bringing attention to it to our local Congress members, making hashtags on Twitter. Like, we are a people that comes together in any way we can, but we don't have that like military strength. And to see this group of people within this book understand that like the diaspora doesn't matter, because anyone who is surviving, they need help, and so we're going to do everything we can to go and help them. And so that's one thing that I am really enjoying about this book. Also, I am a fan of the power of storytelling. A lot of the books that are my favorite consist of book themes and like book writer themes, because as a kid that's just what I was drawn to. And if you've ever watched Once Upon a Time, you know that the storyteller in Once Upon a Time is pivotal to every fairy tale story, because what they write in the book is what people read and it's what goes down in history, and it can make or break a person. And so we have that aspect in this book where there's a heavy influence of the power of storytelling and how storytellers can unite an entire group of people and create a legacy and an entire mythology around whichever characters they're writing about. And so that's how I know that like as a kid I would have loved this book, because it has so many other themes of other books that I enjoyed as a kid, but they were not Black, they were not African American books. So I wish that I had had something like this when I was a child, because it would have meant a lot to me. And where I am right now in my adult life, I feel like I'm getting emotional. Where I am right now in my adult life, looking around the world and seeing the effects of different colonial powers, different imperialistic powers, and how Black people are treated around the world, I wish that there was more of a sense of connection between Black people all across the globe, and that we were driven to save not just our physical approximated neighbors, but all of our brothers and sisters across the diaspora. I think after this one, I'm going to either start Amari and the Night Brothers or 7 Days in June. It is 10 o'clock at night, still Friday, and I have been crocheting for majority of the day while I listen to Tristan Strong, and I have like what would be the equivalent of a scarf, but that's what I have so far. This is actually a lot of work. I wish I could put it all into the camera. So like the visionary is that like this is the top of like what is going to be a throw blanket. So I feel like I made it wide enough to still have room on the side. So I've crocheted the entire first pack of gray, but instead of grabbing another pack of gray, I'm going to go in and add an orange now because I want to kind of have like this block color effect. So wish me luck on that. This is a really big project because I feel like I've been crocheting for hours and I don't even have enough for what would be like my neck to my boob. I did finish Tristan Strong, and I don't know what to rate this book because I have not read a middle grade in years, and this is entirely different from what I remember middle grades being the last time that I read them, because I was expecting something like short and fun and like adventurous, and this was definitely adventurous and it was definitely fun, but it was not short. The amount of like events that we have in this book was crazy to me. Like more things happened in this middle grade than majority of the YAs that I've read recently. I guess what I'm used to, or what I was used to the last time that I read middle grade, was the short contained adventure stories that when you read multiple books created an entire arc. But this book contains enough content for like a duology or maybe even a trilogy. So much happened in this book, and I think that I was expecting it to be over faster than it was, and so I started to feel like it was lagging. Not that the book got bad or boring, it was just like, this is still going. Like, this is an entire story. They could adapt this into a full 2.5, 3-hour movie without needing to fluff up the plot at all. And so, yeah, I don't have anything to compare it to in terms of like a rating. I did enjoy it. It just went on longer than I thought it would, longer than I expected it to. I'm going to read Amari and the Night Brothers and get a feel for how that book is paced and go from there. So I think I'm done for the night because I did not eat dinner because I was so focused on my crochet that I didn't realize how late it was. And even after the audiobook ended, I was still crocheting because I was so focused on what I was doing. It is Saturday, and between last night and this morning, I managed to finish 7 Days in June. Between last night and this morning, I went back to trying to crochet my blanket. I've made quite a bit of progress. Like now I have enough to like, you see where I'm going with it. You can see the visionary, and I was able to add in the orange color a lot, and I'm really, really liking it. But I was so focused on crocheting that like, boom, the audiobook was over. So ended up finishing that one really fast. There were a lot of moments within the book, or like parts of the book, that shifted drastically, that took me out of the story. So unfortunately, it wasn't a 5-star read for me. However, I think that the author built commentary, social commentary, not really pop culture, but like current polarizing topics, especially in the book community and mostly in the Black community, into her books without self-inserting too much and also not directing her readers. And so I really enjoyed that she was able to tie in these so relatable topics without overwhelming the reader or taking them out of the story. I did not expect this book to be what it was. We have two people who are reconnecting in their adult life, and they had a very tumultuous relationship as teens, and they were both coping with the things that was going on in their life, and lack of parental figures, lack of just people that would check on them and look out for them, and they coped through drugs. And the main character, Evie, has chronic illness, and so her pain is literal. Like, you can actually feel the chronic headaches and just the overall pain that she is in the book. And as a teenager, to just numb some of that, she would turn to some more heavy narcotics. And he had a problem with drinking, but he also dealt narcotics as well. And they had this heavily drug influence attraction to one another. It does end kind of abruptly, but you do get to see a pretty lengthy epilogue of them trying to make the relationship work. And the abrupt ending did not bother me, because it makes sense for me in the way that she wrote the story, that these two teens have a history of love and connection between them, but it was him, her, and drugs. And as an adult, they're still figuring out their life and how to have a healthy balance. And he is in AA, and he's trying to get clean from drinking all of the time, because he has spent majority of his life blacked out drunk. And so I think that it will be a challenge, and it is a challenge when you have this relationship with someone where drugs or anything has been like in the center point of like your entire history. And so you have to figure out how to differentiate what you felt that was heavily drug influenced and drug induced versus what you felt for the person that was actually real. And the vices and the crutches that they used as teenagers to numb the world does not work in their adult life, because they are responsible for other use. And so they need to figure out how they can exist and coexist and be together in a way that is not as toxic and not as isolated. Because when they first got together as teens, there was this bubble around them, and they just numbed out everything, muted everything, and they existed within this bubble. And now as two adults, they need to figure out how to exist outside that bubble in a very healthy way. I decided to rate this book 3.5 stars, but on Goodreads, they don't do half stars, so I did not rate it at all. But I would love to see more from this author. I would like her to try and apply her writing to other like tropes, if that makes any sense. But overall, I had a decent time with this. I can't wait to talk about it on Chanel's channel. And this vlog will be up before that live show, so I will put a link for that live show, or like Chanel's channel, because I don't know if she's made it yet, in the description box, so you guys can watch out for that, set a reminder. But now we have read Charming as a Verb Thursday night, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky Friday morning, and then we read 7 Days in June Friday night. I am on a roll, and now it is time to start Amari and the Night Brothers, and I am again gonna have to rely on audio for that, because I'm heading to Barnes & Noble, and I also want to pick out some nonfictions, or just put some nonfictions on my watch list, because me and Aaron are doing collective buddy reads throughout the year where we're picking nonfictions and talking about them on a live. It is not a book club. But yeah, so I'm gonna go peruse the shelves at Barnes & Nobles, check out some nonfiction that might be interesting for us to read together. I have not used either of my 2 book a month purchases, and I'm in the mood for indie romance, so hopefully we can get that done. is Sunday night, and I did not manage to finish Amari and the Night Brothers, and so I've decided to extend this vlog because we're going into Monday and I haven't finished one book. Not to mention I still have one more book on this TBR that I do want to include in this vlog, so we're going to extend it. I was talking to Chanel earlier and she mentioned this middle grade that sounded so good that I'm gonna see if my library has it for me to pick up tomorrow, and if it does, I'm gonna try to squeeze it into this vlog. Update on Amari and the Night Brothers. It is so cute and wholesome and fun, and I am just really enjoying my time following Amari as she searches for her brother, and this entire world, this supernatural world that she has managed to get herself into, is so intriguing. This is such an engaging book for anyone of all ages, so I'm having a lot of fun with this book. I mentioned earlier that I was going to Barnes & Nobles and I was going to try to get some nonfictions as well as a romance book, an indie romance. So I did manage to do that. I cannot be trusted in Barnes & Nobles because I have already pushed my book buying restriction to its limit, because I definitely went over the amount of books that I was allowed to purchase. So there's that for me. If you wanted to know how my book buying restriction is going, I am currently failing. I was doing good today until I went to the store, so that's a thing. The first book that I ended up grabbing was The Dope. This is the real history of the Mexican drug trade. From here, I do want to read more books that are centered around the drug trade, especially in like Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, because I know that they kind of became proxy launch pads to get drugs into the US through Mexico, because they cracked down on the borders of Miami. And so they started transferring drugs the other way when they couldn't get to their usual destination, and now plenty of people in those countries are suffering. So this is my first step in educating myself on drugs and how it influences those countries. The second nonfiction that I grabbed was When France Fell. I really love the cover of this. It is centered around the Vichy crisis and the fate of the Anglo-American alliance. During World War II, it is known that Paris suffered a defeating blow before the US entered the war. They also propped up this quasi-fascist regime in France as well. It's like in Paris, there was the occupied zone and then like the free zone. So I'm hoping to get more insight into this. This sounds very fun. The next book that I grabbed was actually another 50% off book, and that is The Origins of Iris. This is a queer thriller about a woman who is running away from her wife because she is domestically abusive towards her, and she runs back to these isolated this like isolated area in the mountains. And while she's in this isolated area, she comes face to face with another version of herself, and that version of herself has made different choices in her life, and so her life looks completely different. And I think something happens to threaten both Iris and the other version of herself. In terms of indie romances, I took a chance on purchasing Stay With Me, which is a book that I anticipate that I'm really going to like. I bought this with full confidence that I'm going to enjoy this. And then the second book that I grabbed was Twisted Love, and this was my risky purchase because I don't know how I'm going to feel about this book. But I figured if this somehow managed to like disappoint me, then I still had a second option. But honestly, I just want to read more K.A. Tucker because The Simple Wild was such a like perfect romance for me, and it is a series, so I do want to read more of those books. So this vlog is now going to be longer because I am going to keep going until I finish the remaining 2 books on my TBR and perhaps add one more, so you guys get to kick it with me throughout the week. My program specifically, like I said earlier, is in international relations. There is 2 trips to Capitol Hill during the length of my program, and the first one is coming up at the end of March and like the first week of April. So I was running around all day planning my week, trying to get that settled, also booking flights for my trip to Washington to go to the Capitol. Like DC is so much more expensive than any other state that I've ever lived in, so It was consistent of a lot of price haggling, price matching, price comparison, making sure that I was getting not like the cheapest deal, but the best quality for the amount of money that I was spending. So yeah, today was relatively successful. I am ready for the week, and I managed to book my flights to DC. It is like 11 o'clock at night, and besides the footage that you guys seen, I was not able to do any type of update. Grad school has been one thing, but grad school on a Monday, for some reason, Monday for me, 0. Monday is undefeated for me right now. First, let me back up. I did finish Amari and the Night Brothers. I thought that it was so cute and fun, and I am very excited to follow Amari again in book 2. That is like such a great introductory to fantasy and to like a fantastical world for a middle grader. I can imagine them just getting caught up in the world building that Austen was able to create. I bought it for my niece without me having read it, but now I'm glad that I purchased that book for her, and it's definitely going to be a recommendation that I give to people when I am suggesting middle grade books. But I again started from the desk of Zoe Washington, and I think that may be my favorite book so far in this vlog. Like, I've had a generally good reading experience so far, and I really like Charming as a Verb. That had been my favorite, but this middle grade was so perfectly well written. We're following this 12-year-old girl by the name of Zoe, and Zoe has a completely normal life, which I appreciated so much, because it's so much in like Black books we get like this gumbo of Black trauma where they are poor and they're dealing with racism, and they go to an all-white school and they don't have their father in their life, or you know what I'm saying, like it's normally like trauma porn for Black books, and this got rid of all of that. Like, this was like, I will forever love this book for that alone. But we're following this character by the name of Zoe, who's 12, and she loves to cook, and she wants to go on this cooking show, but her parents make her prove herself by working in a local kind of bakery shop for the summer. One day she gets a letter from her biological dad, who has been serving time in prison pretty much her whole life, and she knows nothing about him. Her mother is someone who has gotten married, and she has a really great stepdad who is super active in her life. Her mom and her stepdad have a pretty healthy, balanced marriage, and she has an active grandmother as well. And so she has this entire sense of community, and her biological father being in prison is not something that has ever really affected her. She knows that he went to jail for murder, and her mom told her that he was guilty, he wasn't a good person, and that like they were better off not knowing him, and everything just went on copacetic. The biological father was kind of just forgotten about. And one day she gets a letter from him, and she reads it, and she's like, he sounds like a nice person. Like, he does not sound like someone who would murder someone. And so she is completely intrigued, and she asks her mother, and her mother gets super defensive. She's like, no, he is in jail for murder. I went to his trial. I heard the witness statements. You know, I heard the case that the DA put out against him, and he was guilty. The mom is basically like, listen, he was tried, he was convicted, and then that's it. But Zoe has like this curiosity that just cannot be stamped out, and so she secretly writes him letters back. And every time her dad writes her, he gives her like a song to listen to, and like they kind of cultivate this playlist of just songs that he has given her that she listens to and really falls in love with. And she discovers that he liked to cook too, and his grandmother liked to cook, and she discovers so many like traits that she has that came from her father, her biological father, that she doesn't know anything about. And while Zoe is having such a good time getting to know him, it doesn't make sense for him to be in jail for murder and for her to have this image of him that was presented to her for most of her life. But in the letters, he's so kind and gentle and welcoming and loving. And so she asks him, you know, flat out, what happened? How are you in jail? Just like kids would do. And he tells her that he was innocent. And that is a culture shock and like a societal shock to Zoe, because for her, she is someone who doesn't understand how you can go to jail for something you did not do. She's never been exposed to the idea that there may be a fault in our government system. And she's determined to either make sense of, how are you in jail for something that you didn't do? It doesn't make any sense for the system to fail that much. And so there's a part of the book that I love so much where she goes to the library and she discovers some nonfictions about the failure to our injustice system and how sometimes they can be prejudiced towards Black people, but also just people of color, period, especially if they are poor and they have to take a public defender. And so she starts reading books about how public defenders can kind of fail to really defend their client. And so the story just takes off from there. I thought it was perfectly wholesome. I loved Zoe so much. I loved her grandmother. I loved the support system that she had. Like, I need to order a physical copy of this book ASAP because it was just such a beautiful story. But the author has another book that is called A Soft Place to Land, and that audio was available as well. And it was also only 6 hours. So I went ahead and started listening to that. And oh my gosh, it is so cute and perfect. And this is another one that like doesn't have a heavy amount of Black trauma. Actually, like, I want to say I'm 50% through the book, and there is not a racial aspect to the book in that sense. We are following this girl by the name of Joy, and her father, who has been a significant provider for their family, has lost his job and he was laid off. And to stay afloat, they had to sell their house. And she loved that house. She's lived in that house her whole life. And she is sad about leaving it. She's angry, but also she wants to be a composer and she wants to learn to play the piano. And there's so many aspects of her life that she has to give up now that her family is struggling to stay afloat. And there is some marital problems between her mother and her father because they're making so many sacrifices. And when you have a financial crisis or, you know, just financial instability, period, in a relationship, it puts a strain on the marriage. And so Joy is upset about having to go to this new school and live in this apartment complex and having to be quiet for neighbors when she's never had to be concerned with that before. She's also, uncertain about the state of her parents' marriage. And just like she's 12 years old as well, and just like most kids, she makes a group of friends almost immediately, and they have this little private hangout spot. And when she's at this private hangout spot, someone writes a message on the wall about how sad they are and how much life is just, getting them down, and they're having a hard time finding motivation to, go forth. And Joy writes them back. And so they have this correspondence in this hangout spot on the wall. And she immediately forgets about a lot of the stuff that she has going on in her life that has been getting her down, because she's determined to find out who this person is that has been leaving messages on this wall about how sad they are and how she can help them, as well as how she can help her parents. So she has started this dog walking service in her apartment building to try to come up with money to pay for the piano lessons that she wants to take to alleviate stress from her parents. And it's just so perfectly written. This author is talented. It is refreshing, like literally so refreshing to read a book that has Black representation, that is not overly filled with Black trauma. With the Zoe Washington book, that is how I would have wanted This Is My America to be, because one of the gripes that I had with This Is My America is that the Black protagonist in that book was put through the ringer. She had so much stress on her And while she was such a strong and resilient girl, I felt heartbroken for the amount of trauma that she had to deal with on a regular basis. And so the further I got away from my reading of that book and the more I reflected and thought of it, I ended up unhauling it because it was such a bittersweet experience, because it ended with a happy ending. But at the same time, my heart just went out for such a young Black girl, only in high school, having to deal with a brother who's being wrongly accused of a crime, with a father that's in prison, her trying to keep her grades up, you know, trying to aid her single mother. And it was just like, this girl is riddled with so much stress that she should not have to worry about at her age. And so Zoe Washington it was such a perfect book. And I am really, really loving A Soft Place to Land. And I expected, I gave Zoe 5 stars. It's looking like I'm going to give A Soft Place to Land 5 stars as well. And I want to order physical copies. But yeah, school is something, okay? My day is completely packed with Zoom meetings and readings and just assignments and papers. And yeah, it's a thing. I will hopefully manage to update you guys tomorrow before 11 p.m. But I still like thinking of all the stuff I have to do tomorrow. So I said that I was going to try to update you guys today before 10 o'clock at night, but grad school won again. So it is now 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, and lots of things has happened. I did finish A Soft Place to Land, and I got my hands on a copy. My Barnes & Nobles had this on sale, and so I grabbed it. I don't know if I enjoyed From the Death of Zoe Washington more than A Soft Place to Land, but both books were like perfect for me. And the representation of just mental health and grief and loss and just this author is now an auto-buy author for me, because I immensely enjoyed both books that I have read from her. And this is the type of representation that I am so proud for young Black youth to have in middle grade and young adults. Which brings me to the last book that I was supposed to read in this vlog, and that was required reading for the disenfranchised freshman. I read 50 pages. 50 pages. And then I decided that this was not for me. Now, I took a chance on this one because YA has not been hitting for me lately, but I have still been trying certain YAs that just sound very interesting, but I've never been a complete lover of like YA contemporary. But I decided to just try it because the synopsis sounded so interesting. We are following this 17-year-old Black girl who has been exceptional on her high school academic journey so far, and she has gotten accepted into the local prestigious PWI, and there's also a local HBCU that she would love to go to, but her mom does not want her to because she feels like people who graduate from HBCUs are not successful. And so she's kind of pressured to attend this majority white campus that she is immediately uncomfortable with going to. It's almost immediately after she arrives at this campus, the statue of a Black man, I don't know what he was, he's the university's first Black president, and he had a statue and it was vandalized and black-faced, and she addresses the situation and calls it out. Everyone tells her that she's basically being sensitive and it was just a joke and it wasn't that serious, but she takes it to heart and she continues to pursue the situation because she wants justice for the blackface on the statue. And everyone starts to turn against her, including the student body president of the campus, who has a lot of people that is loyal to him, but he is a very clear racist. Her determination to see justice for the blackface on the statue may cost her her education at this school. That is the synopsis for this book, and I don't know how to put this into words without sounding like a coon, but from page 1 and every single page after was constantly about race and racial comments and passive aggressive, ha ha ha, I didn't really mean to be racist, I didn't know that was racist. Asking what, like, as soon as she meets her roommate's mom asks her mom, did you have her when you were 16? Ha 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 ha. She changes her hair to try to fit in, and every page was about racism. And it's unrealistic that in this day and age, even at a PWI, white people will be this insensitive, this socially ignorant as to like what they're doing. And for the first Black president of this university to have a statue and for it to be Black-faced, and everybody thinks that it's a joke. Even the administrative staff and professors thinks that it's a joke and it wasn't like that big of a deal. And she has to like go to bat. She has to become a social justice warrior her first day on campus. Like, she just got here and she has not met a single person. She has not met a single person on this campus that has not said something racially insensitive to her. Not a single one. Every single conversation with someone in this book is racially insensitive on every page, at every turn. And I was just like, no. This is not what we're doing. Even when they addressed the club for African American students, it was, oh, that was just founded last semester, we just got a Black student body group. Like, that was annoying, and I was not feeling it. Not to mention the fact that her mother kept putting down HBCUs. I mean, adamantly putting it down, and then going so far as to tell her that even though you are surrounded by racially insensitive people, racist people, I'm going to say that because I feel like I'm beating around the bush, but even though you're surrounded by racist people that are being bluntly racist to your face, you need to be nice to them because they can open doors for you. You're here to get an education and to make connections so that you may get a job in the future. And to send your child to a school that is predominantly white already in and of itself is for better employment opportunities in the future. To then tell this child that you must deal with racism every day in class and in your dorm rooms for the sake of getting a job in the future because the people that they know they will introduce you to, just deal with it. I'm getting my money back. I hate to do this to a debut Black author with a Black book, but this wasn't it. This was not it. You try it. Let me know how you like it. Anyways, thank you guys for kicking it with me throughout this video. I know that it was rather long. I hope that you enjoyed some of the insight into what school has been like for me, because I've gotten a lot of comments about my program and what it is that I do and like what that entails. Besides the required reading situation, I feel like I got some really fun hits out of this. I really enjoyed Amari and the Night Brothers. I loved Zoe Washington. I loved A Soft Place to Land, and I really enjoyed Charming as a Verb. And I cannot wait to discuss 7 Days in June later on this month with Chanel and her book club. So happy Black History Month. I hope that you guys enjoy your reading, and let me know if you discover some books, Black representation in any age group that you think I would enjoy.